Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph will begin Mem Hey Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. We learned earlier that if it rained on Yontiv, the rain fell on Yontiv, then the water, if someone scoops up the water, he draws the water, that the tchum of that water is Kiraglei Mamala. Wherever the first person to draw the water, wherever his tchum is, that is where the water can be carried. Meaning it doesn't attain its own tchum, because prior to Shabbos it was in the clouds, and therefore it doesn't retain its own tchum, and therefore it acquires the tchum of the first person that draws the water. The Gemara asked, well, why doesn't it comes from the ocean? It comes from the evaporation of the ocean. Why doesn't it acquire the shvisa, the tchum of the place where it is in the ocean? So the Gemara said that there were rain clouds, and even though it might be a suffix, we're mekel by suffix divrayim, suffix drabanan, we're mekel by Eruvin, and therefore we assume it was in the rain clouds. It was not in the ocean, and it was not in a specific place. Therefore, it did not acquire its own tchum, and therefore it acquires the tchum of the first person that draws the water. Well, why doesn't it acquire shisa in the clouds? Why isn't that its malkum? And why don't we say it has 2,000 amas from that place in the clouds? So Tisha Mino should be, therefore we should be able to resolve from here that there's no din of tchum l'mal miyud, diyesh tchumim, because if there would be tchum higher than 10 high, but in a place that's higher than 10 tfachim high, liknish visa ba'avim, let the place in the clouds be considered its malkum. Let it be kind of shvisa in that place in the clouds, and have alpai mama from that place in the cloud. So don't we have a raya from here? Can't we see from here clearly that ain't tchumim l'mala me'asara, and therefore the clouds are higher than 10 tfachim from the ground, and therefore there's no tchumim there. It does not acquire a malkum shvisa on that place. The first place that it would acquire a shvisa is on the ground, but there they rained on Yontif, so it doesn't acquire its own shvisa. It's karag lemamala. Gemara says, no, you don't have a conclusive raya. I'll tell you that really there is a din of tchumim l'malam asara. Now, why isn't it kind of shvisa in the clouds? Why is there no makom shvisa in the clouds? Why don't we say there's alpaim amma from the place in the clouds? Because the water in the clouds is absorbed. We don't treat it yet as being in existence, so it can't be kind of shvisa. So you can't have alpaim amma from that place because it doesn't exist yet. If it doesn't exist yet, it can't be kind of shvisa. Well, if you say that's mivla it's absorbed in the clouds and it's not in existence yet, kol shekain, certainly then it should be also. And you should not be able, the one who draws the water should not be able to carry it, because Havalu Noila, the Asir, should be Muksa, it should be considered Noila. If it wasn't in existence prior to Yontiv, on Yontiv it came into existence, it's Noila. It was just, so to speak, literally born right now. It's Muksa, it didn't exist before and exists now. So then it certainly should be Asir. So therefore we cannot view it that way, and that's not a reason to say, therefore, that there is no shvisa in the clouds, because we don't consider it to be Noila. Now the Gemara says, but still I don't have a raya that ain't chum l'mal me'asara, because alamaya bavim minat naidi. The reason why it's not kind of shvisa is, perhaps I'll tell you, not because ain't chum l'mal me'asara, and not because it's noilat, but because it's in constant motion, and therefore it can't be kind of shvisa. Something that's moving cannot be kind of shvisa. So therefore, it can only be kind of shvisa when it comes to a resting position, and that's on the ground, and that's already on Yontif. Well, now that you come to this explanation, I'll tell you that you don't have to say that there's heavy rain clouds and that the water is in the rain clouds on the onset of Yontif. Really, I can tell you that it is in the ocean, and it Now, on the onset of Yontiv, it was in the ocean. It came from evaporation and it rained on Yontiv. And we don't have to say that there are heavy rain clouds. So why is it not kind of Shvisa in the Okeanos, in the ocean? Why do we say that the Tchum is Karagla Mamala? Because Okeanos, Nami Loy Luksha, it's not a Kasha, because my Okeanos, Nami made a 90. Because it's also in constant motion. So therefore, perhaps the water, yes, was in the ocean on the onset of Yontif, but it's not kind of shvis on the ocean because for the same reason, it's in constant motion. And therefore, it's not kind of shvisa there, it's kind of shvisa when it falls on the ground and it rains. But you have flowing streams and you have springs that the water is gushing. They don't have their own shvisa because they're in constant motion. So the karagle kol adam, it has the tchum of the one that draws this water first, that takes this water first. It has there, that's the tchum that it has. So therefore, I can say that's why over here you don't have a raya about ein tchum l'mal mesora, but the rainwater does not acquire a shvisa prior to Yontif because it's in constant motion. So the Ravid says, there's a whole dion in the Rishonim. The Ravid says, we see from here that an object which is in motion on the onset of Shabbos or Yontif does not acquire its own tchum. It's in movement, it's in motion, it does not acquire its own tchum. And he says, similarly, would say by a person, by an adam, the same thing. And we compare the same thing. So a person who's walking on the onset of Shabbos, if he's in motion, then he doesn't acquire. If he's traveling and he's walking, is not part of his city, but if he's walking, he's traveling, he does not acquire a Malkum Shvisa. But the Rashba argues, and other Rishonim argue, that they say you cannot compare a person to a keli, to a chayfetz. A chayfetz, if it's in motion, doesn't acquire a shvisa, but a person is different. A person has an ability to acquire a shvisa, even if he's in motion, he's a baradas. They ask a kasha on the Ravid, because in the case we had by Rabbi Gamliel, they were on the ship, and we had the whole discussion of yesh tchumim l'malam esara or not, and we said that if there was tchumim l'malam esara, then there would be kind of shvisa in the ship, and therefore when they came to the port, they would not be able to disembark. So don't you see from there clearly that by people, even though they're in motion, that we say they do acquire a tchum shvisa, they do acquire a tchum. Some terutzim are given, the Bir Halacha answers that that's not considered in motion. The people aren't in motion, the ship is being moved by the water. So wouldn't be considered to be that they are in motion. But that is a diyun by Machlekes Rishonim. We see over here that objects that are in motion don't acquire shvisa. What about people? He says the halacha is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri. So we learned in the Mishnah that a person is sleeping, and he woke up and he saw that he was sleeping on the onset of Shabbos. And then, even though he was not aware of that Shabbos is coming, and he was not cognizant of the fact, and therefore didn't have das be kind of shvisa, nevertheless he's kind of shvisa. So that's the halacha. Did you hear this beferish explicitly that this halacha, or do you learn it out from a general rule? He said, he said, I heard it beferish that that's the halacha. My klala, what is a klal that he could have learned it out from? The klal is that we're asking like the mekel in Eruvin. In Eruvin we go by the mekel. So therefore, the klal would lead me to teach me anyway that the halacha is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, that even though a person is sleeping, nevertheless he still is kind of tchum and he has alpayim mama. Well, why do I need both of these facts? Why do I need both of these statements? Why do we have to say beferish that the halacha is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri? And we know in any event the halacha is kedivra mekel, and therefore we'd be mekel to say that the halacha is like him. So no, I need both of them. The Yashmin and Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, because if it only told me that the halacha is like Rav ben Nuri, I would have thought that the halacha is like him, bein lekula, bein lechum. So where it is it a kula? In the case we just said, that even the person was sleeping and didn't realize, he still acquires a tchum. He has 2,000 amas in each direction. Where is it a chumrah? Well, if we say that hefse hefker kind of shvisa, that means if you have an item that was hefker, it was ownerless, and then the onset of Shabbos would have alpayim amma, the tchum would be restricted to 2,000 amas from where that item was on the onset of Shabbos. Now, if a person picked it up on Shabbos, he would be restricted in carrying it with the tchum of that chayfetz. He wouldn't be able to carry it wherever he can go. He would be restricted to carry it 2,000 amas from wherever that chayfetz was on the onset of Shabbos. So then it would come out of chumrah. So that's why it has to tell me that the halacha is like Rav Yechon ben Nuri, and then if he told me only that, I would think bein l'kul bein l'chumrah. It has to tell me halacha divrei mekel be'eruv, that we only paskin like Rav Yechon ben Nuri, where it's a kula, but it would be a chumrah. We don't. So legabe the chefske hefker, we don't accept Rav Yechon ben Nuri. We're not machmir, and the person is not restricted to the tchum of the object on the onset of Shabbos. So why isn't this a stira? Why isn't this considered a contradiction one to the other? How can we say that chefse hefker are not kind of shvisa, and a person who's sleeping is kind of shvisa? So as the Rishonim speak out, they say it's not necessarily considered to be a contradiction, because Rav Yechon ben Nuri himself holds that chefse hefker kind of shvisa, like we demonstrated in the previous moment. However, we can accept what he says legabe a person, and not accept what he says legabe a chayfetz, because legabe a chayfetz we could say chefse hefker are not kind of shvisa. But legabe a person we could say that over there he's kind of shvisa, because since he's able to make the kinyan when he's awake, he's able to be kind of shvisa when he's awake, he can be kind of the shvisa when he's sleeping as well. Now that's what you have by a person, that since he's a bar das and he's capable of being kind of shvisa if he be awake, we say he can be kind of shvisa when he's sleeping. But by a chayfetz you don't have that svar, so therefore we can be mechalek that way. Frank the Gemara, well, if that's fine, so then why do I need to say beferish that Allah is like Yomi ben Nuri? If really it comes down to, it boils down to that we're mekel by Erev, and it's halacha kedivrei mekel by Erev, then that should be sufficient. The Gemara says it's no, I need it both. I have to tell me beferish that the halacha is like Rav Yechon ben Nuri, because I might have said that when do you say that we're mekel by Eruvin? That's only if the argument is one yachid, one individual against another yachid. V'rabim makim rabim, or rabim keneged rabim. Aval yachid b'makim rabim, but if it's one ton, and he's arguing with the Rabbim, like here in this case, where it's Rav Yechon ben Nuri against the Chachamim, Ein Eloi, I might have thought in this case we don't go Kedivrei Mekel Be'eruv. That's why it has to tell me beferish that the halacha is like Rav Yechon ben Nuri. Amalei Rav Abaye Michli Eruvin d'Rabban. He said, why would I think that just because it's a Yochid against a Rabbim that it would not be Mekel? The din of Eruv of Tchumim is a D'Rabbanan. So if that's the case, Mali Yachid b'Makim Yachid, Mali Yachid b'Makim Rabim, well, it should make no difference. I should be Mekel in any event because it's a Din D'Rabbanan. So now the Gemara is going to question that premise. You're assuming just because it's a D'Rabbanan that we would be Mekel even though it's a Yachid against a Rab. So Frek the Gemara, Amalei Rav Papa L'Rava, he says, D'Rabbanan Leishanilan ben Yachid b'Makim Yachid, LeYachid b'Makim Rabim. Even though it's only the Rabbanim, we would not differentiate between a Yachid against a Yachid or a Yachid against a Rabbim. We learned in the Mishnah, Nida, we learned that Kol Isha Shavrala Shalosh Einais, if a woman that she had 3 periods that have passed and she did not see Dam, Daya Shaitan, then she is only Tomei from the time that she sees Dam. There's a Din the Rabbanan, Chumra d'Rabbanan, that a woman that if she sees dam, so she's Tamei and Nida, anything that she touched within 24 hours retroactively of the seeing of the dam is Tomei. It becomes Tomei retroactively, unless she did a proper badika within that time. But if she sees dam, she's Metama Meis Leis. she's Tama 24 hours, whatever she's touched will be Tama retroactively. However, if she has 3 periods where she doesn't see Dam, then we can assume that she's a Mesulekes Damim, that she's not going to see Dam, and we don't apply this Gzera. So that's what Rabbi Elazar said. Maisa v'asa Rebbe Rabbi Elazar. So it was a Maisa where Rebbe, he passed on Rabbi Elazar. Lachash and Isker, but after the Psak Halacha, he reminded himself of something which we'll see what that is in a moment. And Amar Kedai hu Rabbi Elazar lismach halah b'shas adchak. And he said, we can be Saimech, we can rely on Rabbi Elazar b'shas adchak. It's already Lachar Maisa, that we can rely on the b'shas adchak. So my Lachash and Isker, what is this that he reminded himself with? If you'll say it means he reminded himself that we don't paskin like Rabbi Elazar, we paskin like the Rabbanan. Well, if that's the case, well, Shas Adchak, no, Shas Adchak, if that's not the halacha, how can he rely on Rabbi Elazar if that's not the halacha? So what is the pshat? Ella must be Ella delayed mehel like Rabbi Elazar like Rabban. Must be that there is no beferish ruling psak whether it's Rabbi Elazar Rabbanan. And la'achash nizker the lav yachid poligaleh ela rabban pligaleh. And then when he reminded himself that those who argued on Rabbi Elazar, it's not a yachid, it's the rabbim, and therefore he should have followed the rabbim. He said, Amar kedai hu Rabbi Elazar lismach halah b'shas adchak. He said we can rely on Rabbi Elazar b'shas adchak. Now, this what we're dealing over here in this case is Exer D'Rabbanan. So it's a D'Rabbanan. And nevertheless, if it wouldn't be Shas Adchak, L'chadchila, he would not rely on Rabbi Elazar. Why? Because the Rabbim argue with him. So you see that even a Din D'Rabbanan, that we're not Mekel if the Rabbim argue on the Yachid. And another kasha to that premise, Amar Rabbi Shashal L'Rava, V'Amar Rav Nachbar Yitzchol L'Rava. And you see, I'll show you another proof that we differentiate between whether a Yachid argues with a Yachid or a Rabbin with a Yachid, even by a D'Rabbanan. We learned in a Braisa, if a person heard Rahman al-Islam about the Patira of a close family member, where he is chayiv for Shiva and Shleshim, if it's a Shmuel Kroiva, if the Patira happened within a close period of time. We'll define this in a moment. Then, if it's a Shmuel Kroiva, he has to be Naik Shiva, the 7 days, and Shleshim, and the dinner Shleshim. But if it's Rechaika, if it's the news is old news, so to speak, then Rechaika ain't a Nagas al Yemech. Then he's only Naik the Avelis for 1 day. Ve'eza, he Kroiva Ve'eza Rechaika. How do you define Rechaika, which is close and which is far, which is delayed? So b'sayich shleishim kroiva. If he received the news of the Patira, if it was within 30 days of the Patira, is called kroiva, and he has to be nai shiv and shleishim. Allah shleishim rechaika. But if it's after 30 days, it's old, it's considered delayed, it's considered old news, then he's only like 1 day. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. That's the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. Well, Chacham, they say no. Chacham argue, they say, Achal Shmua, Kroiva, Achal Shmua, Chayka, Nega, Shiva, Shleishim. They say it makes no difference, and in any event, you have to be Naik, Shiva, Shleishim. And on that, Vama Rabbi Rachana, Rav Yaichnan, Kol Makam, Shata, Maitzi, Yachin, Mekel, Rab Machmirim, where you find that a Yachid is Mekel, and even though there's a Rabbim who argue, but they're Machmir, Halacha, Kedivre, Amachmirim, Amaruba. Generally speaking, we follow the majority. Even though the majority are Mekel, we follow the Roiv, the Merubim. Chutz mizu, except for this case, Shafal b'sh Rabbi Kiva Mekel, v'chachomim machmirim, halacha k'dev Rabbi Kiva. Nevertheless, in this case, even though Rabbi Kiva is a das yochid, he's against the Rabbim, here we're Mekel. Here we're Mekel. Why is that? Because here we're talking about Avelos. And there's a special rule, there's an exception that by Avelos we go boss of the Mekel. Now, even though we're dealing over here by Rabbanon, it's only that we're Mekel over here and we follow the Das Yochid because of Avelos, because it's Avelos. And there's a special rule that we're Mekel by Avelos. By Avelos, It's only via veilets that they were make aval ba'alma fil b'derabbanan shani ben yachid b'malkim yachid ben yachid malkim rabim. But other dinim, even if it's a derabbanan, we do differentiate whether it's b'malkim the yachid is arguing with the yachid or malkim against the rabim. So therefore, it was necessary for us to say that the halach is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, because even though we say the halach is divrei mekel by Eruvin, but over here it's a yachid arguing with the rabbim. And generally speaking, even in the Rabbanan, we don't follow the yachid against the rabbim. So therefore, we can maintain the teretz that was given before. But now the Gemara offers another solution. Rav Papa Amar, it was necessary to tell us that the halach is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, even though we have a klal that halacha kedivrei mekel be'erev. Because Salkadaita might have said Hanimil be'erev chatzeres. That where is it that we're mekel by an erev? That's by erev chatzeres. The erev be'tchumim emaloi. But I might have thought that by erev tchum I don't apply that rule. That's why he has to tell me beferish that the halach is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, even though we're talking over here by tchumim, not erev chatzeres. It has to tell me that the halach is like Rav Yochanan ben Nuri and we're mekel. The Gemara now on this Amud will discuss this chilik between erev chatzeres and tchumim.